our way to getting vaccinated so they don't have to worry so much about this virus. It'll be nice when we can really move forward on things, and this is the first giant step towards that. So I want to welcome everyone this morning. It's a beautiful, bright Arizona day, except for Frankie, who's in Pennsylvania. So sorry about that, Frankie. But it's a beautiful day here. I'm going to start actually by unspotlighting myself, and Natalie Johnson is here. So if Frankie, if you can spotlight her. So I want to thank everyone who participated, not Natalie.
Okay. Sorry, Natalie. There's too many Natalies here. Hold on.
Yeah, my Siri gets that wrong all the time. So we had our auction, and our auction finished on February 12th, and it was a grand success. It was fabulous. So I want to, let's see, there we go. There's Natalie.
Good. Sorry, I was still searching, Natalie. Sorry.
That's good. So it was a great success. So I first want to thank everyone who participated in the auction. It was an amazing auction. And it really has enabled us now to start doing all the things that we are planning to build for 2022. Yep. One of our goals is to expand. So I'll talk about that in a second. But this woman here, Ann Gail Hart, who couldn't be here this morning, they were the two women behind that amazing auction. I don't even know how many hours they put into it. Natalie's looking pretty good today, so she survived.
Lots of makeup, fresh shower.
Yeah. But I want to thank you both so much, Natalie and Gail also. It was an amazing auction, fabulous items, and I almost had a few more things to be delivered today, but you did a great job of getting everything out. You did a great job of the auction. So everybody that's not muted, or if you are muted, I think you have a big round of applause to Natalie and Gail. You did such an amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really fun to put together, and thanks for everybody participating and bidding up. And it was really fun to pass out the things because everybody was so thrilled, and it fit them exactly for who they were, which was really fun to see people come in and then just light up and be happy about what they're getting. And we're not passing around stuff from somebody's garage to another. And, so worthy causes and local stuff and, services, experiences. So thank you, everybody. It was great. And yeah, we pulled in more than it was what kind of my target, but we didn't think we'd get there. So it was good. So thank you.
Right. And the people that I forgot to thank, I want to thank everyone who donated items to the auction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I know Marianne Leahy is here today, and she donated that fabulous piece of ceramic art with the ravens on it. I got outbid on it, but I'll be okay. I think it was so beautiful. And there were tons of other things that were donated. So thank you to everyone who donated.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the people that participated in it.
Yeah.
So now you get a rest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Get out. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So that was the really, really happy news about the auction. I do have two people that we have lost a couple of members this year, and I just wanted to say a little bit about them. So Bill Rowland was a long-term member of DORR, along with his wife, Evie. Bill passed this year. I believe it was this year or the end of 2020. And I kind of knew Bill a little bit. I did Italian lessons with him, and he was in his 80s when he was doing these Italian lessons, and he spoke Spanish pretty well. And we would go along, and then just like me, he put in a Spanish word, and Sandy Mercer, our teacher, would say, Español, Bill, Español, es Italiano, or e Italiano, actually. And he was always so good spirited. And, Bill and Evie both, they had such giving hearts. They would go down to Honduras, and they would help the people, the Hondurans that live down there. I know they donated their time and their money to support people, and they would do the same thing for the immigrants that were here in Sedona. So I just want to say that we remember Bill, we'll miss Bill. I'm sad that he's gone. And I received this from the family of another long-term member. I'm going to share my screen that we've lost. And oops, oh, I got to open it. And that was Searle. So I know a lot of you knew Dick Searle. I had the privilege to meet him when the office was open. He came in and he would take care of all of our technological equipment, all of our computers, etc. Is an amazing, wonderful man. So this is the tribute that I received from him. So I'm just going to read it. Sometimes a single person like Dick comes along that touches many in an unforgettable, helpful, selfless, extraordinary, and timeless way. Then one day he is gone forever. It is with great sadness after a health challenge with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Dick has peacefully passed on. On a serious yet typically caring note, Dick personally requested no physical gatherings during the time to keep people safe during the COVID crisis. With your understanding, let's leave a legacy of remembrance rather than strife. Announcements will be made later regarding in-person gatherings in celebrations and renditions of Dick's life. So, you know, he was an amazing man, computer geek, conservationist, masters in chemical engineering, mountaineer, rocket scientist. I didn't know that. I thought that was really cool. Designed his solar house. There's some pictures of him.
And he loved dogs.
That's what, yeah. So we'll really miss Dick and Bill both. And we're so grateful for the time. I'm so grateful for the time that I got to know them, and they will be very, very much missed. So moving on, we send emails out all the time, and one of our goals for 2021 is to expand our reach to have more and more people know about Democrats of the Red Rocks so we can share wonderful programming like we have this morning. So anytime you get an email from us, think of the people that you know that are democratically minded like you in the Valley, in the Verde Valley, and please share our emails with them. It's the way we get out the word to more people than we know in our that our members are on our current email list. And we want to expand that email list. We want to expand our information to people so that we can, you know, we can move forward in our efforts to elect Democrats to office. So please do that whenever you get one. And one of our big efforts in 2020, as many of you know, was to, oh, I forgot something. Oh, we're recording, by the way. I was supposed to tell everybody that, was to flip the state legislature. We did get one additional seat in the state legislature, but we did not flip the state legislature. We are not giving up on that. We are going to continue to work on that. The redistricting that is happening in 2021 and probably into 2022 will affect what our districts look like. So legislative district 6 may look a bit different than it does now, and we'll see how competitive it is or not, but we're still fighting that fight. The state legislature is so critically important to each one of us. It is important. It affects our lives in very direct ways, and in many ways more than the federal legislature does. And that's what this program is about today. Our state legislature, how it affects us, what's happening in the state legislature this year. And we have a brand new program chair, and that is Ellen Ferreira. So she'll be spotlighted here in a second. And she has put this program together, and she is going to introduce our guests. So I think it's a great program that we have today, and I'm really excited to hear from all our speakers, and I'll turn it over to Ellen.
Thank you, Cathy. This is an awesome program, and I'm really excited about it. Natalie Burdick will speak first, and she will give us a broad perspective of the importance of state legislatures, not just here, but everywhere, because Natalie has been co-chair of the Sister District Project in San Francisco, and their main goal is to flip state legislatures. They recognize the importance of that. And so we'll hear from Natalie. I loved it when Pat Corrington said earlier she was a sister in our house for a year. For those of you who don't know, Natalie moved to Sedona in 2019 to manage the campaign for Felicia French for state senate. And she did a great job, and we have all become very fond of Natalie on a personal level. So it's wonderful to introduce her and to have her come back here again to be with us. Natalie?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ellen. And I just love seeing so many beautiful, gorgeous faces. I can't say all the names, but it's wonderful to see Ronnie, my insanely amazing host who gave me a home in Arizona while I was there, and Madeline, my wonderful hen mother, and Sue Gold, of course, and Pat, one of the most amazing canvassers that we had while we were there. So many, Holly and Cathy. I'm so excited that you are in office now and doing good, and that's just so wonderful. It's always great to see Ellen, and I notice Rick is on the call too, which is very lovely. And of course, Toby, who's just a stalwart in terms of organizing. I'm sure I've missed some folks, but I know so many of you, Karen, who continues to do the hard organizing work. So thank you. I'm gonna share my screen really quickly. I think I have about 15 minutes, so just make sure to keep me on track. You can zing me if I start to go over. But you know, I just wanna pause for a moment and say one thing. And, you know, DORR, Democrats of the Red Rocks, Indivisible Sedona, these groups, you know, we get very motivated and energized as we get closer to elections. There aren't any elections happening in Arizona this year. In fact, there really aren't many elections happening around the country this year, other than in Virginia and a couple other places. But what I've come to realize is that this work that we do isn't about elections only. It's really about building a movement. It's about all of us being part of a system of change, and change that takes time. So I think actually the work that's happening in 2020 in a non-election year is actually almost as critical as the work that happens during an election year. And I think that's something we need to kind of wrap our heads around, because I think we get into this sort of mode of, oh, there's no election going on, so, you know, we'll do a little bit here, we'll do a little bit there. It's not a big deal. We can relax for a while. But guess what? The Republicans are working 24/7 constantly to hold on to their power, to expand their power. And for us to bring the values and the vision that we want for our communities, our neighborhoods, our cities, our states, our country forward, we have to be working all the time as well. So I feel like we're in a movement together, and I'm so proud that I got to meet all of you and be part of that in Arizona, as well as now back in San Francisco. So just some context before I talk about, you know, what I'm here to talk about, which is state legislatures. And really the only reason I'm here talking about this is because I found out about a group, a grassroots organization, kind of like DORR, that started back in late 2016, right after the election, that focused exclusively on state legislative races. And the reason why Sister District Project was founded by 5 women in order to do that was because, you know, in deep, dark, crazy blue San Francisco, you're not going to make a whole lot of difference focusing on local politics, right? That's not going to move the needle. So they looked around and they said, you know, what can we do that's going to have the biggest impact? Yeah, we could focus on a presidential race every 4 years. We could focus on congressional races, but really where we can make the biggest difference is at the state level. So that's where they decided to put the energy. And they took that energy and wrapped it into a strategy. And the strategy is that when we look at states, we want to look at those where we have the opportunity to flip them. Arizona was actually a flip opportunity in 2020, right? Because we were within 2 to 3 seats in either chamber to win the majority. So we look for states where we have that really close margin. We look for blue holds because sometimes there is a Democratic majority, but it's a super fragile one, right? Like it's a 1 or 2 seat majority, just like that flip opportunity, only the reverse. We don't want to lose those states, so we have to protect them. And ultimately, we want to expand our majority so that they're not so fragile. And then the last thing we want to do when we look at states, and this is something the Democratic Party writ large, right, at the national level, dropped the ball on after 2010. We lost close to 1,000 state legislative seats in 2010, that election, right? And that was because the Republicans developed Red Map and made a concerted effort to win those state seats. It didn't happen by chance. It wasn't just like, oh, the electorate changed their mind and they all decided to vote Republican. That is not what happened, right? So we are clawing our way back towards those seats that we lost and getting a majority again. And that's the important thing to know. We're not trying to do something that hasn't been done. We actually had the majority in state legislatures, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So this is our strategy. And the blue inroads is the example of, hey, we may not flip that state in an election cycle, but that doesn't mean we ignore it. That doesn't mean we give it to the Republicans. We're going to challenge them at every place where it makes sense to challenge them. And especially where we can break a supermajority, because that's where the really bad laws get passed, right? Because there's just nothing to stop them. So we got to break those supermajorities. So that's our strategy. That's what we're trying to do in terms of focusing on state races. But why? Like, why focus on state races to begin with? You know, there are really 4 reasons. Number 1 is building the bench, right? Did you know that half of all United States presidents started out as state legislators? You have to have some experience to be a lawmaker, and the state legislature is the perfect place before you go to Congress, before you become a governor, before you move to higher office. So really, you need to train people and you need to build that bench. So that's reason number 1. You want to have lots of Democrats at the state legislative level. Number 2, policy impact. 23 times more laws are written in state legislatures than in Congress. So if you're thinking about things, as Cathy said at the beginning, that affect your daily life, it's not over in Congress. It's not those executive orders necessarily. It's actually your state legislature. That's what's going to affect your backyard. Gerrymandering and voting rights, because really gerrymandering is all about vote suppression, right? Carving up districts in a way that people's voices are not represented by those elected. So if you want to protect the most sacred right in our Constitution, in our democracy, which is the right to vote and to have your vote count, that happens at the state level, right? 37 states are responsible for districting, right? Which again, Cathy mentioned. So that determination is controlled by those state legislators. So you can either have people that want a fair, nonpartisan approach, or you can have people that just want to consolidate power. And even in Arizona, where you have an independent districting commission, we all know it's not that independent. It depends on who gets on that commission, who gets to be the deciding vote, right? So it does matter who your legislators are. And then for me personally, I could definitely make calls for Biden. I could definitely make calls for senators. But I know that little old me, when I make a call for a state legislature, my voice has a bigger impact. My dollars, when they go to a local race, they have a bigger impact. So that's why personally, for me, Sister District made sense, because I wanted to have an outsized impact, right? So that's the sort of narrative behind Sister District Project. Now, how have we done? What's been the progress? Well, since 2016, I want us to stop for a minute. And this is really hard, you know, because we are getting inundated with news and stuff all the time, but take a breath. And then think, what has happened since that election on November 6th of 2016? We no longer have a Republican president. We no longer have a Republican-controlled Senate. And we no longer have a Republican-controlled House. Those are huge wins. And, you know, when they happen, we kind of like went, oh yeah, that's good. And then we move on, but stop for a minute and really take stock of those wins because they're so cool. I can't tell you, I was on cloud 9 for so long after the Senate outcome in Georgia, even though the Capitol riots happened like literally like a day after or later that day or whatever it was. The timing was like right there. I was like, we all need to be so incredibly excited about what just happened in Georgia. And you know, this is insane what's going on, but we have to take stock of what just happened. We've also won 8 governorships during that time frame. Democrats have won 8 governorships, and we've clawed back 183 of those state legislative seats, which that number compared to the 1,000 doesn't seem like that great until you think about the actual strategic value of those particular seats, because those seats led us to winning 7 chambers and 9 trifectas, right? So you have to win all 1,000. You have to win the right ones that are going to have the most impact. And I'm going to show you something really quick. Let me see if I can get to my screen here, because, you know, words, they're hard. They're hard. So I'm going to try to show you visually what that means. So this, if you can see on my screen, is what the state legislative trifectas were right after 2010, right? So that's basically 20 Republican trifectas and only 11 Democratic trifectas, right? So 2 to 1, they had us outgunned 2 to 1. And if you go through the year, then they increased even more, 23 to 10, 24 to 13, 23 to 7. Look at that, 23 to 7. 2/3 of the state legislatures were controlled by them. Sorry. Again, in 2016, right at the that unforgettable election, they were again 3 to 1. So where are we now from that low, low point? We've doubled the number of trifectas that are under Democratic control, right? We've held them, but we've doubled our number. That is so significant. And that's the progress that we've made in just those last 4 years, right? So that's the important thing to understand, because when we have the ability to do that, we really can change things on the ground. So this is just a very high level, what we've focused on and what we've done. And you can see we're not in all 50 states. We're in the states where we really think we can make a difference, right? So that's kind of where we've been. And just so you know, this is where we're going, right? So for 2021 and 2022, these are our goals, right? We again want to flip states, and you can see Arizona is back on our list, right? We are going to be working in Arizona again for sure, as well as Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, and Wisconsin in terms of flip opportunities. We want to hold Virginia. That's a lot of the work that we're going to be doing this year, is actually back in Virginia again. But we also want to hold Colorado and Nevada, which were Senate majorities that we won. And then we want to start to continue to make those blue inroads. So we saw really great things happening in Georgia at the congressional level and at the presidential level, but their state legislature is still very red. So we've got to work on those efforts as well. Now, the last thing I want to point out here is something new called state bridges. And at the beginning, I talked about the fact that, you know, electoral work is so critical, but actually it's part of a movement, and that movement has to go on and be really strong during non-election years, right? You've got to continue to build your base, build that power. So what we're launching at Sister District is a program called State Bridges, where we're going to identify partners on the ground, most likely nonprofit statewide partners, that we can help support during non-election cycles so that they can do real grassroots community organizing, right? We're going to support them in those efforts. So that means fundraising primarily for a lot of these groups, but also we may be capacity for them as they need. But we want to look at the model of success that, frankly, Stacey Abrams and so many of those groups in Georgia used in order to win the election in 2020. That was a 10-year effort. I'll go back even further to Virginia. That was also a 10-year effort to get to where it was in 2017 and 2019 when we actually flipped Virginia, right? And that's the important thing, is these things take time. Here in Arizona, as a result of SB 1070, right, the Show Me Your Papers law, that launched Lucha and so many other grassroots organizations that said, hey, this is not who we are. We need to change who's representing us. And that movement has moved us forward to the point that someone like Biden could win the presidency, and Kelly and to a certain degree, Sinema could win, right? At that higher federal level. But we need to keep doing that work so we can win the state legislature. But it means it's possible because Arizona is moving that way. And by the way, it is so critical to do that work now. It is so critical to get people to understand the importance of this movement right now, because what's happening in Arizona is the case study for what goes wrong when a Republican controls the state legislature, right? Look at the policies that are coming out of the state legislature right now. Arizona has over 14,000 people that have died from COVID. It's in the top 5 states for highest case rates. And yet the legislature, instead of dealing with that issue, what are they doing? They're spending time trying to disenfranchise voters. They've passed somewhere between, or trying to pass somewhere between 19 and 30 bills just to take away voting rights, to take away Pebble. This is insane. They're trying to criminalize women's health and personal family decision-making. They're trying to criminalize it. Walt Blackman in our own district introduced a bill that would allow county attorneys to criminally go after doctors and their patients for having abortions. And they continue to take away public funding, siphoning it off for profit and for private for-profit schools, right? Despite the will of the voters, they're doing everything but representing constituents, right? They're serving their own needs. And I think, you know, Wingnut Wendy, she even wants to name a stretch of highway in the Verde Valley after DJT, after that insurrectionist, traitor, seditionist, right? It's insane. That's why these things really matter. And, you know, I was just reading in the Brennan Center that, you know, around the country, there have been somewhere in the neighborhood of 160 laws being drafted, passed, whatever, to suppress voting around the country. And that is so distressing. But guess what? There are over 540 laws to expand voting around the country in those state legislatures where we have Democratic majorities, right? The news is always negative, but if you look, you can actually see signs of progress and see signs that the movement, if it's strong and it continues, will do the things that we need it to do. So I will leave with one last thought.
Perfect.
And that is from the poet laureate that spoke at the inauguration, which I'm hopeful that all of you watched and enjoyed. But, you know, when I heard her say this, what was ringing in my ears was actually what Biden said. Because Biden said this progress, this hard fought progress, it doesn't happen unless enough of us work to make it happen. And that's what we are. We are that movement. So the states, I always say this, states are sexy.
Thank you, Natalie. That is awesome. We could have you speak for the whole hour. It's wonderful. You're very inspirational. Thank you very much. And perfect segue into our next speakers. And I guess we will be spotlighting both Melinda Iyer, and we have a bonus speaker today. Not only do we have Melinda Iyer, who is, of course, the person responsible for the famous Iyer Report, which we all use when we do our request to speak. We also have Cathy Sigmond, who is co-founder of Save Our Schools Arizona and co-founder with Melinda of Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. These organizations have come to the forefront of Arizona politics, progressive politics, they are relied upon heavily by us, by indivisible groups, by progressive groups all throughout the state. And the job they're doing is unbelievable. I can't even imagine what Melinda does to put out that Iyer report every single week while the state legislature is in session. Cathy is there backing her up, getting all of us registered to request to speak. She sends runners over to the state capitol building because that's the only place that you can sign up for an account. So we don't have to go down there. We can let Cathy know and she'll send runners over there and open our accounts. These two women have done a phenomenal job, and we are so proud and happy that they took time out of their very busy schedule right now to be with us this morning. So they will speak, and then later on we get even another perspective on the state legislature from Minority Leader Rebecca Rios. So this is terrific. So thank you. I will turn things over to Melinda and Cathy, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for having us. The first thing I want to say is how Natalie just absolutely hit the nail on the head. State legislatures are so important. They affect our lives directly. They are much more accessible than our representatives at the federal level. And we know that we have our work cut out for us this session and beyond. So hi, I'm Melinda Iyer. I'm the founding editor of the Arizona Legislature Weekly Report, which Ellen mentioned as the fondly nicknamed Iyer Report, and co-founder of Save Our Schools Arizona, as well as Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. And I do work to bring the report to you every week, and in between weeks. It's a living document. I update it as I receive new information. There are 3 updates at the top of this week's report, and I believe there were more than 3 last week, but the week isn't over yet. So I do ask people to check back in with that report. Follow us on social media. I push a lot of information out midweek on Twitter. But you know, it's not just a static thing that comes out once a week. I add things as the week goes on, and folks have asked me, you know, why isn't it a spreadsheet? Why don't you just list the bills and let us sort of go down the checklist? And there are a number of reasons for that. I want folks to learn the process, learn their representatives, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I sympathize with you folks up in Sedona that it's mostly ugly. But RTS is a gateway drug. Cathy is very fond of saying that RTS is a gateway drug, but it's a stepping stone that we can use. You start learning what your representatives are up to. You learn about the issues, you learn the process, and then when it comes time to make a phone call or send an email, you know, that's not quite so scary, or maybe testifying in committee, and you know, you're able to make your voice heard on a much broader level using that RTS as the introduction to the process. So we only cover in the report the bills that are either actually moving or have a chance of moving. One of the bills that I added midweek is Senator Martin Quesada has a ban the box bill, which allows folks with a previous felony record a little bit more of a chance to be heard on the merits in a job application, rather than folks just looking at their job application and saying, oh, they checked that felony box at the top, I don't want anything to do with them. It delays, you know, that box until later in the process and gives folks a chance to reinvent themselves after making a mistake. And it was double assigned. This bill was double assigned to 2 committees, and Senator Quesada managed to get it through one committee, but it has to be pulled from that other committee or it dies. And so that was one of the alerts that I put out this week, to please take 3 minutes out of your day and make a phone call and ask Senate President Fan to withdraw it from the other committee, so that this good idea doesn't die with all the others that are going to die today. Today is the deadline for bills to get out of committee in their chamber of origin. And we can have that kind of effect. So Senator Christine Marsh is another example of a good bill that's moving after we pushed on it. She lost her son tragically just before becoming a senator. He took some drugs that turned out to have illicit fentanyl in them. And she is sponsoring a bill to legalize fentanyl testing strips so that lives can be saved. Because right now those are illegal. They're classified as drug paraphernalia. And we helped her support this bill and helped it get off the ground. And it has had its first committee hearing, and it's alive now, thanks to our intervention and support. And there, of course, are bad bills moving too. You all probably know about Senate Bill 1069, which is Senator Ugenti Rita's bill that would drop, as some estimates say, over 100,000 people from the permanent early voting list and turn it into simply the early voting list. And you may have read that that bill died on the Senate floor this week, but it's coming back. It's coming back as a striker. Strike everything amendments. This is going to be the week for them coming up. It's an amendment that removes all of the existing text from a bill and introduces sometimes completely unrelated language. I like to call them zombie bills. And so we'll be watching that. It's going to be attached to 1485, but it's going through Senate appropriations next week. And that's one of the reasons that we update the weekly midweek, is that these strikers have a way of just popping up. Things can be added to committee agendas very quickly. And we want to keep you on your toes with that, because you don't want to be supporting a bill that is being gutted and is turning out to be something bad. And of course, you want to be able to weigh in on a bill that would do great harm, such as this one. And people have also asked me, why don't you categorize your bills by topic? And I keep them by day so that there are folks who do their RTS once a day, because it is a lot to sort of, go through the report on Sunday and do everything. But also because I have this philosophy, and I believe it was John F. Kennedy who said, a rising tide lifts all boats. So, Cathy cares passionately about public education, and I care passionately about voting rights, and maybe Natalie cares passionately about environmental protections. And if all three of us use our voices to speak out on all three of those issues, we have elevated each other's voices and increased the power that we have jointly together. So I really believe strongly in the philosophy that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that we can act together to make the change that we need to see happen in this state legislature, which is pointed in the wrong direction. And Ellen has asked me, what keeps me going? What keeps my head from exploding as I'm reading all of this horrible legislation? Because frankly, there's just, I do try to spotlight the good for everyone, but there's not enough good. They're really focusing in the wrong direction. But what keeps me going is knowing that you all are out there focusing on this report, using it, and using your voices, taking my work and really using it to make a difference is honestly what keeps me going. So I don't know if y'all have any questions for me. I'd be happy to answer questions. But
Melinda, could you talk for a little bit, just a couple of minutes, about the drama between 1069 and 1452?
So much drama. So much drama. Okay, so there are term limits in our state legislature, but there's nothing to preclude them from just switching chambers. So what we saw this session was a lot of our more extreme House representatives termed out in the House and switched over to the Senate. So the House is still pretty bananas, but the Senate now really takes the cake for being the bananas chamber. And what we saw happen this week, Senator Paul Boyer, who unfortunately for his Republican colleagues maybe has a little more mind of his own and doesn't always vote just in lockstep with his Republican colleagues, he started killing some Republican bills. He killed in committee Senator Wendy Rogers' bill to end traffic cameras, even though cities and counties were there speaking out against it, saying, hey, our law enforcement is stretched thin, like we really need this as a tool. And he listened to them and killed that bill. He then killed 1069, Ugenti's bad voting rights bill, which would purge people from the permanent early voting list. He killed that on the floor. And I think that was the last straw for her. She's got a vindictive streak. So she made a motion to recall the voucher bill, which had just been voted on and passed by that chamber the day before and sent to the House. She made a motion to bring it back. Like, if I can't have what I want, then you can't have what you want either. And 6 Republican senators did vote to recall that bill from the House, joined by all Democrats who saw rightly an opportunity to stop bad legislation. You know, and poor deluded Kelly Townsend sitting in her office on Zoom, like, wait a minute, you know, we can't be retaliatory. That's not who we are, but turns out that's exactly who they are. And so now both bills are sort of in limbo. You know, 1069 died, but the subject matter is coming back as a striker. The Senate is going to sit on the voucher bill to try to put pressure on Boyer to vote for its replacement. But you know, we all saw how he can dig in when he wants to. He did that 2 sessions ago, I believe it was, to get a bill that he felt strongly about passed. So, you know, the best case scenario is that they shoot each other and themselves in the foot, and neither of these bad bills move. But it was, I was embarrassed for them watching this, you know, on the floor. And I was texting with staff and with several Democratic senators going, you know, do you know what's happening? I don't know what's happening. What's happening? And then we finally figured out, you know, because Ugenti didn't tell us what she was going to do. But felt embarrassed for them, but not bad enough for them to, you know, I was happy to see it happen. So they, no one knows exactly what's going to happen with those 2 bills. And I don't even think they know, but, you know, Senator Fan was clearly frustrated on that day, said several times, you know, just another fun day in the Arizona Senate. And I don't feel bad for her either.
Yeah, I just I wanted to tell that story in a way to spotlight the incredible sources that Melinda has behind the scenes. You know, not only reading a lot of what's written and reading all those awful bills and summarizing them, but also listening to all the staff, direct lines to a lot of the legislators. And all of this has been built up sort of organically over the last 5 legislative sessions when we both began this incredible journey. So what I always turn to Melinda for are explanations of, you know, what's going on? Why are they doing this? What is happening behind the scenes? What, you know, why would this senator be saying that? And, you know, a lot of behind the scenes stuff and arcane procedural maneuvers. Melinda has mastered all of it. It is just so incredible.
Natalie said in the chat too, don't feel too sorry for Paul Boyer.
Yeah,
really to be highlighted because he sponsored that voucher bill. And Ugenti votes with her caucus on vouchers, but doesn't really feel strong about it. So that's, I think, why she picked on that bill in particular, because she knew it was important to see that bill die.
Yeah. What I will contribute before we sort of open it up for questions, I do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff for Civic Engagement Beyond voting. So many of your names are familiar, even if your faces are not, because we register people for request to speak at the Capitol. And I don't think there is another state in the union that has this incredible system that was created really for lobbyists to let legislators know, oh, I support this bill, so, and I donate to your campaign, so please vote for it. And we, the citizens of Arizona, have hijacked the request to speak system, which is now an online tool. And after your name, your account is created at the Capitol, you can weigh in with a simple thumbs up or thumbs down on legislation that's being considered in committee at the Arizona legislature. And I do call it a gateway drug because it is a way, it's how I got started. You know, I started out just running down to the Capitol and creating accounts, and gradually it's like, well, maybe I'll sit in on a committee meeting. And then I became utterly fascinated with this beast that is the Arizona legislature. And that is where I met all of the people that I work with today, including Melinda. So the legislature, for all its horribleness, has been very, very good to me in terms of meeting hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people all over Arizona. We have registered as a group, probably, I think it's over 7,000 people now for the request to speak system. And then we send out a newsletter every Sunday morning between around 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And it includes a link to Melinda's weekly. We also have started this session, an online happy hour, every Sunday afternoon from 4 to 6 p.m. And I'll drop the link to register for that in the chat. It's become so much fun. Melinda gives a brief update on the week ahead in the legislature. And then we help people, we have breakout rooms to help people if they have trouble using the request to speak system. Then at 4:30, we've been able to feature a legislator who can talk about their, what they're working on, and also as part of that happy hour. And then we're also covering process. So some of you may know Deborah Howard, who covering redistricting for statewide indivisible, and all around what's going on in our crazy legislature. The other thing I want to endorse organizing, because we consider the legislative session is a fabulous way to get people interested and engaged. And then in the back half of the year, we continue to work with those people on additional actions that they can take. And then we have one more legislative session, and then we move into the direct election cycle. And in 2022, we not only get to re-elect our entire legislature, but all of the statewide offices are up for election in 2022 as well. So this 2-year period is very important to build that grassroots power and strength and communication and outreach that we continue to build for the next 1.5 years until the election. So it is a year-round job. And after that, I'll shut up, and if people want to ask questions, more than happy for Melinda usually to answer.
So I do see the first question in here from Marianne. Is there any danger that the legislature could move to limit or reduce RTS if it becomes too widely used? So the Republicans about 2 years ago thought that we were all bots and, you know, accused progressive activists of having, you know, hijacked program in some way with bots. Well, now they have figured out that we are real people and have focused their interest in Cathy's volunteers who go down to enter names and, you know, think that maybe that shouldn't be happening, that you shouldn't be able to enter names for people. But the truth really is that they do still rely on this system for lobbyists. And they want to hear from their pet lobbyists. I don't know if anybody here watches committee hearings, but Senator Boyer, when the voucher bill went through committee, called on Matt Beinberg from the Goldwater Institute so many times that Senator Sally Ann Gonzalez asked him point blank if he had written the bill. So they do rely on the request to speak system, and I don't see that they're likely to discard that anytime soon in the absence of something to replace it.
So you can put your questions in the chat, or if that's something you don't know how to do, you can also raise your hand, or if there's so many people on this particular meeting, we might not see your hand, just speak out if you have any questions.
I have to say I've come to several of the happy hours at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoons, and they are really worthwhile. I don't know if it's just because we were on a legislative junk or what, but the speakers are good, and every one that you've had, including several from the state legislature, emphasizes the importance of the value of the request to speak system and how it is used not only by the legislators, but by the press as well. Mm-hmm. Emphasizing that everything you write in those comment boxes are public. And so, you know, be nice when you say things because other people will see them.
Yeah, it's definitely tempting to call names, but, you know, we have had legislators that read, you know, they will find a comment that really speaks to the core of the issue and they'll read it into the record, either in committee hearings or on the floor. And reporters use them in their stories as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, Melinda, the fact that the press looks at this too. They look to see how many people support a bill or you know, the opposite, don't support a bill or against a bill. And so I think that's a valuable pressure that we can put on the state legislature, the fact that the press looks at that.
So I see also in the comments, somebody asking about the large Republican turnout for the gun bills. So the other major user of Request to Speak down there is the Arizona Citizens Defense League, which was formed because the founders considered the NRA to not be extreme enough. And, you know, they are really, really out there. And I'm on their mailing list. I don't think they know that, but they have started begging for more people to please use RTS because they're worried that they are getting outshouted. And that's really, really lovely to see. So I do make an effort to spotlight good and bad firearms legislation. So just keep that in mind as you're doing your request to speak, that you are another brick in that wall between us and the bad activists.
We also have Toby Friedman with us this morning. And I would love Toby to have a few minutes before Senator Rios joins us, because she is heading the action committee for Democrats of the Red Rocks and has put together training with Shelley Haken, another person who's on the call here. And so I would love it if Toby could describe what we're doing here in Sedona, see if you guys have any input that you would like, anything else we should be doing or could be doing. Toby, do you want to tell us what's going on now with in Sedona here?
Yes, so we have requests to speak. We shouldn't have reinvented the wheel, but we're trying to draw in all the people from DORR and our Verde Valley and Prescott people to be a part of what actually you're doing. And I wanted to remind everybody that because of what we did with requests to speak at the legislature, we crashed the site a week ago. And Melinda, I was just writing it in the chat to tell everyone, Melinda and Cathy, no, there were so many people on the site, it crashed, and everybody was like, tee-hee, you know, we couldn't get our work done, but we were very happy that so many people were there. So in Sedona, we take Melinda's newsletter and Save Our Schools and Annie Schneider and ACLU, and we put out a list of bills from that. Mostly it is Melinda from your site, but there are people who want suggest certain bills that might be for Northern Arizona. And then we meet on Mondays at 10 o'clock, and Shelley goes through, you know, step by step, because there are a lot of new people, and shows them how to get onto the site. And then together we put our support, our opposition, or and something in the chat in the box that describes how we feel about the bill. And it's a nice group of people who are doing it. And so far we started, you know, at the beginning of the session, and we have about 80 people with us. And I know people at DORR have received emails and phone calls to join us. So if you have received it and you haven't responded, we'd love to have you, and I will send you the information. And I spoke to Cathy Sigmond, and she contacted a woman who's a trainer for them, for a trainer for requests to speak, and she said, I'll just do your training. So we recorded that and we send that training to anyone who's new. So that's a background you can have at home to look at how to do requests to speak, and then you can join us and go through it with Shelley and the people who are there. And we ask questions, and we discuss certain bills, of course, about Blackman and all the people up here who are putting in bills that we hate. So we do have that going on also during our meetings.
Thank you, Toby. We do have, okay, the senator has joined us. So I want to thank Melinda and Cathy and Toby so much. We appreciate your being with us. Please, you know, stay with us, Melinda and Cathy, if you would like to. We'll move right on to Senator Rios, because I know she's very busy, and I just can't believe you even taken the time out from the Senate to come here and be with us today. We appreciate it very much. Senator Rebecca Rios is the minority leader of the state Senate. Before this, she has also served as minority leader of the House of Representatives and as minority whip in the House of Representatives. And she is a native Arizonan, has an MSW from ASU. And just so you know, Senator, we tried very, very hard not to send you Wendy Rogers. We apologize that you have Wendy Rogers. We worked very, very hard to elect Felicia French.
I know.
And this was not to be. So our condolences for you, but we wish you the best. And we're so excited that you're here. Just tell us what it's like there. I mean, it's just been so crazy, everything we see and hear. So we'd love to hear your perspective, and thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for inviting me to be here with you this morning. It's always great to be able to step off of the crazy floor and talk to real people. With regard to Wendy Rogers, there's always a silver lining to everything, right? Sometimes you got to really search for it. But with her, what I've decided is she is really the gift that keeps on giving. You could literally do a what's up with Wendy this week. I mean, between, harassing staff of the ethics committee, making personal declarations I guess she acknowledged that she was taking the hydroxychloroquine or whatever, however you pronounce it. I mean, this woman is just so far out there and so crazy in her behavior and her comments that I think the best thing that all of us can do, but particularly you all, is highlight each and everything she's saying and doing. I think that is going to be the best way to get the word out in your district. This woman does not represent most reasonable people in the area, and that will help us get Felicia in here next time. Because of the members, I think in the entire legislature, she is probably the most extreme and dangerous. I mean, she is an interesting character, to say the least. And what we've realized is the more time she's here, the more she continues to expose just exactly who she is, what she espouses. And again, I think that works to benefit all Democrats, and that works in this 2-year campaign to hopefully change the players in your district that are representing you here at the legislature, including her, including Blackman. So that's the silver lining with Wendy. So how are things here at the Arizona legislature? I saw that you had Melinda on. I'm assuming that she was talking with you all about what I've called the mother of all voucher bills. I mean, there are no words. I think what I have realized this session is that every terrible, horrible idea that Republicans have ever had or can think up in this short period, they are introducing. And my personal belief is it's the realization that we came very close to taking over one, if not both chambers this year. The realization that this could be their last hurrah in terms of pushing this type of stuff. And so they have blown the lid off in terms of just introducing things like we've never seen before. And so many of them coming from all different angles that it makes it very difficult for us to kind of focus and really fight one thing, because you've literally got terrible bills going through every single committee every single day. But again, I view that as a sign, I think, of desperation and the realization that this party is not going to last forever for them. So they're trying to get as much through as they can. You know, unfortunately, that voucher bill did get out of here. I think we all as Democrats spoke very loudly in terms of what we see it doing. From my opinion, it's almost this horrible resegregating of children, and, you know, allowing the flight of children who, for the most part, their parents can afford to put them in private schools. So, you know, now we're funding these kids with taxpayer dollars from everybody, but rural Arizona, you know, that I used to represent Pinal County for a number of years, and there were not public or private schools in that area. So I don't know how a lot of these Republican rural legislators sell that to their constituents, that, you know what, your tax dollars are going to subsidize the private school education of a kid in Scottsdale or Phoenix or Tucson. But that was just a horrendous piece of legislation. I don't know if you noticed, a couple days ago, we had one Republican get upset at another Republican for not providing the vote to get through a horrible bill that essentially would have, you know, eliminated our permanent early voting list. So Senator Ugenti Rita threw a fit and recalled Senator Boyer's voucher bill back. So of course, as Democrats, we were all very excited to say, yeah, bring it back, give us another bite of that apple. So we're anxiously awaiting that bill to come back. Apparently the House has to vote and send it back to us. So I'm curious to see if they will. Push comes to shove. I mean, like I told Senator Boyer, call their bluff. I mean, none of these Republicans are going to vote against that bill. So I'm not sure what they're trying to prove with him. But the minute it comes back, we've already got a plan to make, you know, let's vote on it now. You know, how many Republicans are still upset with him, and will they vote against it and kill it? Let's give it a try. So we have not given up on that. Clearly, if it stays in the House Republicans will keep up that fight. But here on the Senate side, you know, Wendy Rogers, yesterday there was a bill that went through our Health and Human Services Committee that's actually a really good bill. It was introduced by another Republican, essentially said, you know, women that need and want birth control pills, they can get them over the counter, you know, work with the pharmacist and answer the questions, do what they need to do. Takes out that extra step of having to go to a doctor's office. It was actually a good piece of legislation. Birth control pills been around since the 50s, and it passed out of committee. Wendy Rogers opposed it based on some flawed logic of another wacky Republican, Kelly Townsend, that it was somehow I forgot the word they used, but that it's some sort of abortive type thing, even though we had an OBGYN that said, no, that's not possible because it prevents, you know, the fertilization of an egg. But anyway, again, to give you more fodder for Wendy Rogers and how she's out of step, I think, with most folks. The Senate, I think historically has always been seen as the more mature, quiet, responsible chamber. I'm not sure what's in the water because it's been really crazy around here. A lot of infighting with the Republicans, a lot of bickering. And again, I attribute that to the fact that they now only have, they have no room for error. They need all 16 members of their caucus to vote for bills. And they've got one renegade, Senator Boyer, that sometimes is with them, but sometimes is not. And I think that's what's creating all the intra-fighting within their own caucus, of which we stand ready, you know, to take full advantage of. But again, I think we're starting to see all of this as the numbers get closer, as the squeeze happens, and reality, I think, starts to set in that this run that has literally, oh my God, it started in the 60s, it's close to ending. So we've got them on the ropes. We're getting closer. And all the work that you all did last year, it's provided, you know, foundation for the next election. So it was not in vain, and we're still continuing to build on that. I can keep talking, but I also want to entertain any questions that you all have. Should I look in the chat, or?
I think if people just unmute themselves, maybe that would be
great.
The easiest. I know everybody here is focused on request to speak and
Yes.
the value of that.
And that is very helpful because as legislators, when I'm sitting on the floor and I'm Googling every bill right before we vote on it, I look at the request to speak because I want to know which people, which organizations chimed in support or opposition. That's very helpful. I know legislators, many legislators use that. And oftentimes if there is a string of, you know, 50 or 100 names, it cues you to go, well, wait a minute, what's going on? If there is nobody signed up in opposition, oftentimes you'll assume, okay, it must not be that bad. And again, with hundreds of bills going through the process, we're not able to read each and every one. You're going to be more aware of the bills that went through your committee. You're going to get a general overview in caucus every week. But again, that's just a summarization of the bill. So oftentimes, I'll be honest with you, I've been here since 1995. Members will look at the board and identify where are those people I'm most aligned with, where have they voted. They'll look down at the summary and they'll look at the request to speak. So it can be very influential. So chime in, you know, once you get registered here, chime in on each and every bill that you have an opinion on. It's only helpful. It truly is. And the other thing is you can also request to speak. At the bottom of the agendas, there's, you know, the email address. You send the email in, it goes to the respective chairman to get you on the list to speak the following day. So again, I encourage folks to do that.
Talk
Rebecca?
about the relationship between the Republicans and particularly in the Senate, and what's going on with the governor and his view on certain bills, and whether there's tension there, collaboration, because he seems like a key figure, particularly given what happened in the election and his support for the outcome.
That's a great question, because I definitely can see the cracks in the relationship. I mean, we saw it even before we came into session, a number of Republicans furious with him for, declaring a state of emergency with this pandemic, and yet he never even did anything, right? But yet they are insistent upon taking away his executive order power. And there are 6 different bills going through the process that seek to do that. So there's definitely a strained relationship between a large group of Republicans and the governor. He's, for all intent and purposes, a lame duck governor at this point. The other big issue that there is a lot of dissension, there's a number of them, but right now we are in the midst of the approving the amendment to the Indian gaming compacts, the compacts that were put into law by initiative in 2002. They are up now they need to be renewed. They're good for 20 years. It's time. The governor has negotiated with the tribes, and in that negotiation identified that he wants for all of Arizona sports book betting, fantasy sports betting, Keno, but there are Republicans that are not necessarily on board. Some of them that don't believe in gaming at all, philosophically. Others that want it open even wider so that Keno can be provided not only in VFW lodges, but in every bar. Other Republicans that are fighting because they want what's called historic horse racing. So again, this is not a governor that has general wide support from his caucus. I think there are plenty of opportunities for us to exploit those cracks. The only problem with this governor, and I've worked with him his entire career here as governor, is he really does not venture outside of his comfort zone of only ever wanting to work with Republicans. He could, in so many instances, work in a more bipartisan fashion and put a feather in his cap for doing so, but he is ever so reluctant to ever work with Democrats, which is a real shame. But it remains to be seen, is he going to be able to get all of the support that he needs from his caucus, whether it's gaming compacts, the budget. We are weeks out. My understanding is the appropriations chairman here in the Senate is saying that, we're weeks from even discussing the budget. We're already in February. Typically that budget is debated and passed to mid-March. So there are many folks saying, oh my God, we're going to be here till June. And those are people on the Republican side. There's also Republicans saying they don't want to hurry and end session because in the event the governor does something with regard to an executive order, they're not going to have the ability to call the legislature back into session if we've already adjourned. So I guess the long answer is there's ample opportunity to exploit a very weak relationship that I see right now between the governor and his party.
So Senator Rios, there are some questions in the chat. Marianne asks, will HCR 2016 to require supermajority on initiatives have a chance of passing the Senate?
I'm afraid it will. I think the only potential holdout, maybe, I don't even know. So I'll be honest, because there are no more moderate Republicans, we are relegated to Senator Boyer right now. He's the architect of that horrible voucher bill. So we fight him tooth and nail on some things. On other areas, we pull him in and say, hey, can you help us kill this? I have not talked to him specifically about that bill, but he is really the only chance that we have on a lot of bills, but I don't know where he's at philosophically on that. I'm afraid that there's going to be support for that supermajority, and this is with regard to initiatives, because they didn't want Prop 207, right, the marijuana initiative. They certainly did not want Prop 208, and we see what I think is the governor, when he came out and said he wanted to provide $1.2 billion in, tax cuts over the course of the next few years. My immediate thought was, is this going to be a backdoor attempt to try to make whole those folks, those, top 1% that were affected by Prop 208, knowing that he was so opposed to 208? I think those two initiatives alone unfortunately will motivate a lot of these Republicans to try and pass that higher bar. It's so frustrating. We only need a simple majority to get that garbage through the legislature, but now they want to raise the bar for, you know, all Arizonans, and to heck with direct democracy. We will fight that all we can. But at this point, I don't know that we would have the one additional vote that we need to kill it. We might have to do some horse trading, you know.
It's so challenging. It sounds so challenging.
We're so close. You know, all I keep doing is making a list of all this nonsense, so that when we're in majority, we got a lot of stuff we got to clean up on the statutes. We got a lot of stuff to undo. So we're ready when that day comes.
Yeah, it's going to come. So Karen Stroud asks, what happened to the short-term rental issue that was highlighted by a joint legislative committee after the legislature adjourned last session?
Oh gosh, you're gonna have to remind me. Short-term rental issue. I'm not recalling.
Karen, do you want to say more about that?
There's a couple bills, like Representative Kavanaugh in the House, 2481, 2482, about allowing some control back to cities and counties to regulate Airbnb.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what? I honestly, I don't know specifically off the top of my head where those are at. I know there has been support on both sides of the aisle for that regulation. But I apologize. I honestly, I'm scrambling here looking at some of my summaries, but I don't recall where that's at.
I don't think anybody introduced, you know, mirror bills or things in the Senate, and they were, you know, they were Kavanaugh's bills, who we normally would be opposing anything with his name on it, but he seems to be the only Republican, you know, down there pushing, you know, for some sense on this issue.
Right. The irony is interesting, right? It could be that there's not a mirror bill here in the Senate, so we haven't actually had that discussion, but I think that is an issue that continues to have, you know, support on both sides of the aisle. They represent communities that are being affected with those. So I don't recall, was that one of the bills that we lost because of the early shutdown in COVID, in which case I would assume the support is still there. It's just a matter of running it back through.
I don't think it ever got to the full House last time. It may have gone through committees, but it probably was one that never got a full hearing due to COVID. I think it got heard in committees because they were introduced by, you know, Kavanaugh and a couple of other Republicans who, you know, who get their bills heard.
Isn't that neat how that happens?
Rebecca, I got a question. You've been down there a long time. I know your dad was down there even longer. So even though we're on the verge of turning Arizona even more blue, what do you think about the chances of seeing a more rational Republican Party? You talk behind the scenes to current Republicans, former ones from past years. You know, when you were first in the legislature, we had people like Tom O'Halloran and Pete Hirschberger as Republicans. Yeah, Linda Binder. Do you see within the Republican Party in Arizona any signs of, on the grassroots and people running for office, that there may be Republicans starting to decide that moderation is the way to go, looking at how the voters vote on initiatives and things?
I don't see that playing out. And for the simple fact that at the end of the day, we still have, even though we have an independent redistricting commission that has made our, you know, our legislative lines better and a little less gerrymandered, you still have very few swing districts. Of the 30, there might be 4 or 5 in which you could actually get a D or an R out of that general election. The majority are still slanted in one direction or the other. You know, it's typically the party faithful that are voting in primaries and sending the most right or left out of the primary. I see these Republicans here very similar to the congressional and senatorial Republicans that, you know, are really kind of bowing to their base and these crazy notions. I mean, we have the Senate here that was willing to go as far as to try and pass a resolution, essentially giving us authority to arrest the Board of Supervisors in Maricopa County, 4 of the 5 of which are Republican. Again, they are playing to their base hard. We've gotten thousands, literally, of emails, stop the steal. I mean, ugly, nasty. And many of them are focused at, we need to just arrest the Board of Supervisors. Karen Fan, she is all on board. I mean, she wants this, recount. So I don't see the Republican legislators here becoming more rational or moderate. In fact, I see them becoming less because they want to get reelected and they are really playing to the far right. I mean, for goodness sake, they still have Kelly Ward as, their chair. I think that speaks volumes.
There are just a couple more. So if you have a second, more,
Sure.
Senator, that are in the chat, and let's see if I can find them now. One of them is, do you think the governor might veto some of the voter suppression efforts if they reach him? How do we have influence on him?
Oh gosh, I think we have a governor that is still hopeful for higher office. I mean, we saw him just, ingratiate himself with Trump up until the point where Trump broke up with him, right? And publicly humiliated him. Again, I think the last thing that this governor is going to want to do is upset his base, and that frightens me. I think for the most part, he's most apt to feed into what his base wants and unfortunately support some of these voter suppression bills. I've not heard otherwise. Of course, he doesn't really give us any indication on how if he's gonna sign or veto things. My gut tells me there's probably a better chance of him signing a lot of this stuff than vetoing it. The power of, I think, social media is huge, and it's important, and it didn't exist in 95 when I was first here, but it exists now. And I think continuing to stay on top of him through social media, Wendy Rogers, all of these folks is it's helpful. It gets picked up. We've kind of created this echo chamber where then we're all retweeting and reposting. And they see it and they react to it. So, I mean, we've had some of the crazier legislators completely drop off of Twitter, right? Fincham, the guy who helped with the insurrection, Kelly Townsend, they've completely taken their profile off of Twitter because I think of all the negative that they were receiving, and then they've gone to some far right social media platform. But I think that is the best way, in addition to, the phone calls, personalized emails, to his office. Again, form letters, it's too easy for legislators to ignore them. I would say, try and personalize it, even if it's just short and sweet. That is going to be, I think, more effective. So no, we don't give up that cause, right? We continue to keep the pressure on him and make the calls and work the social media, the letters to the editor, et cetera, make as much noise as we can. Because I think he still has aspirations, I don't know, maybe to be the next US Senator here in Arizona. So he's going to be monitoring what's going on out there publicly on him.
Okay. And then the last question, I think this is Ann Emerson asked, we are considering reaching out to Governor Ducey about vetoing the negative Pebble bill, et cetera. What's the likelihood that they could actually meet with them, and would they get further if they had a bipartisan coalition together?
I think that would probably be helpful, because I think he would be less apt to think that, oh no, they're just going to attack me, it's just Democrats, bipartisan. If he was smart, he would recognize this is his opportunity to, he self-declared himself the education governor, and we know that was not the case. So this could be an opportunity for him to declare himself the bipartisan governor. But that is a good strategy, to say, we are a bipartisan group of folks that want to talk to you about X. And you may not get a meeting with him, but maybe you'll get a meeting with his staff and they report directly to him. So that does not hurt. I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Senator Rios, for being here. It's really nice to be able to see behind the, what's happening with you in the Senate and in our legislature, and we really appreciate it and all your work. You've been there for a really long time. Thank you so much for all your dedication. And we are going to continue to do every single thing we can in the Verde Valley to make it so that you have a blue legislature.
Oh, and thank you for all your work, because I know you guys are thousands of phone calls and door knocking and talking to your neighbors, and we just got to keep it up, right? I think that's the biggest impact, is the people we know, talking to them and explaining one by one why it's important. That's what gets us there. So thank you all for your tireless effort. And if you next year when we don't have COVID, if you want to come down and shadow me or see how it works, please do. Open invitation always. And thank you for everything you're doing.
We'll come and see you.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
So that was an amazingly good program. I want to thank everybody that was on the program. Natalie is going to speak. I'm going to do some closing remarks in just a second, but Natalie had a couple things she wanted to say. So if you could highlight her again, that would be good. Frankie? Spotlight.
I'll go ahead and get started, even if I'm not spotlighted, because I don't want to take up too much time. I said at the beginning that we're all part of a movement, and hopefully you hearing from Melinda and Catherine and Senator Rios has reinforced that. But I will say two more things. Number one, you all worked so hard to help try to elect Felicia French instead of sending Wingnut Wendy to the Senate. And I can't thank you all enough for the work that you did. Honestly, you were tremendous. And it's worth noting that you don't win everything, but here's the important thing, is that if you do lose, you're losing forward. In other words, you're making progress. The lose doesn't take you 2 steps back. It takes you a step forward, even if you don't quite cross that finish line. And the thing I want to really emphasize is that in Arizona, there is, something that's called the rising American electorate, which basically means young unmarried women, folks under 40, or actually under 30, and people of color. This is where the shifts are coming, that you can actually get people to vote the way that you need them to in order to get these progressive folks elected. And in Arizona right now, just statewide, they make up about 65% of eligible voters, but they only make up 58% of registered voters. That's a gap. That's a gap that right now, look at Flagstaff, look at that college, right? Right now is when you need to be reaching out to those college students and getting them registered. Not a few weeks before. You got to keep hitting them and hitting them and hitting them, because they're not thinking about it. It's not top of mind. But that's the kind of thing, and working with the Democratic Party right now and getting the voter registration information about voters who are inactive voters. The way I think about it is they are future voters, right? Let's not call them inactive voters. Let's call them future voters. And this idea that we're part of this movement and you're making progress, some of these bills, they're horrible, but we've got to show up, because the more we show up, the more those people know that they are being watched. And that makes a difference. It may not make the immediate difference right now, but it will make a difference. So I just encourage everyone, to really get excited about this stuff. I know it's an off year, but I'm excited. I'm thinking about actually volunteering for swing laps. So I'm going to be all over the place. But anyway, just wanted to say that. And again, honestly, I just wanted to thank so many of you here. And by the way, what a great turnout. You had over 50 people. That is amazing. So kudos to Ellen and Toby and Cathy for your leadership, and, and for everyone who's doing the great work. So that's it.
Thanks, Natalie. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. And I also want to thank Melinda and Cathy for all of your hard work to make sure that we all know what to do with RTS when we get on RTS. And thanks for signing us up at the Capitol. Thank you for being here. We did make big inroads in 2020. We moved our volunteer base. We have a greater volunteer base than we've ever had before, and it's Verde Valley wide. We turned out voters at a rate that we have never done before. And so we did make inroads. I liken it to a giant cruise ship that we need to turn, right? And it's not over here where we want it to be, but we turned it. We started to make a difference, and we're going to continue to make a difference. And in our action plan, exactly what Natalie was talking about, the fact that we need to do outreach to these groups that are not represented in this meeting here. You know, that we need people that are younger. We need people that are of the Latinx community. We need people of color to make sure that we are reaching to everybody that we can within our, you know, our arm's reach, I guess I would call it, in the Verde Valley. And we are working on that. And another thing is that we are going to do to the editor. We just had our first conversation about that yesterday, because we do not want to wait until 2022 to inform people about everything that Wendy Rogers is doing right now in the state legislature. We want to, and Walt Blackman, we want to make sure that people know ongoing that these people do not have our best interest in mind. They are not representing us. And so that when the election comes, they don't think it's just this, you know, mudslinging that happens during an election. It's the truth. So if you want to get involved in any of that, you can put your name in the chat. You can call the office. Margaret Connery is our volunteer coordinator, and we'll make sure that we get you hooked up. We need people to help. There's never too many, believe me. So thank you so much for all the people that do help. The higher voter turnout, yes, we want to figure out. I think we register ourselves. We register the people in the state of Arizona to turn up blue. In my mind, that is what's going to make the difference. We register Arizona to blue, and we need to really start focusing on that. So there's a lot of work that we need to do, and we are not just sitting around thinking about 2022. We're doing it right now. So please get involved. So thank you so much, everybody, for all of your time this morning. It was a fabulous program, and it was a wonderful turnout. I was going to tell you that too, Ellen. It was a great program. So please keep in touch. And if you know anybody that wants to be on our email list that's not, please let us know, and we'll get them on there so they can be getting all of our great information.
Cathy, can I make a quick announcement?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes. So
Ronnie.
Hi, my name is Ronnie. I'm the membership chairman, and we've been sending out emails and messages for people to renew their membership. Right now, I think we've got about 110 people who have renewed their membership, but we have over 200 people who have not. So please, please, please renew your membership by going onto our website, democratsoftheredrocks.org, and clicking on the Join tab. And you can either pay online with a credit card, or there's a way of doing it with printing your membership form and sending in a check to our post office box. So I please encourage everybody, please renew your membership. Thank you so much.
And if you're having any problems with that printer, our printer died. So I couldn't even print a form right now if I wanted to. Just let, you can email info at democratsoftheredrocks.org. That goes directly to Ronnie, or you can call. We have Margaret is answering the phone, and we'll get you a form. Believe me, we'll get you a form. And it does help. It helps to expand our reach, but it also helps to support our efforts. It's not a lot, $25 for one person and $40 for a family. And those little bits do help. So any other announcements before we go? Sorry, Ronnie, I didn't have it written down. So thank you for reminding me. Anything else for the good of the order? Toby, go ahead.
I do have a story maybe to end with, a late story. And this, I'm not going to mention any names. It's about a couple for the last year who during COVID was trying to find things to do together. And the wife said, let's do puzzles, let's do cards, let's do try cooking, let's try hiking. And he said, no, how about sports? I love watching sports all day. And she's like, no. And so for the last year, I haven't been able to find that one thing. But guess what happened? Request to speak together, and the two of them now sit next to each other with their two computers, and they go on and they discuss the bills and they are a part of Request to Speak. So I thought I'd pass that story on. I'll probably be telling it a few more times. So if you're looking for something to do, join us, Request to Speak. I put the email in the, you can just, Toby video at me.com, but I put the action email in the chat. So join us or ask Cathy, call the office and they'll point you toward me. So I'm not telling who it is. So she did have her hand up in case you noticed.
Thanks, Cathy. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. You have a wonderful Thursday and we'll see you in a month. Bye.